You see people here that start with podcasts and end up with, luxury brands or, deals with, massive lifestyle companies, etc., over time.
You won't say the name yet, but I'm curious about how you guys will launch.
We have an internal tool. All I have to do is drop the audio of the episode. It will give me all the descriptions, everything completely generated fully, right? Completely generated. And that's an inbuilt system that I built it myself.
This is built off his back, very clearly. And we're lucky to have somebody who enjoys the work as much as he does.
To be honest, I think the secret to your guys' growth and success is your openness to not only new ideas, but it seems like there's no egos. Everybody's just trying
there are egos. I'm not going to say no ego.
Well, everybody has a hint of egos.
I think we
it's
keep
very-
let's say this.
It's a healthy.
Everyone has an ego, but I think the core team doesn't trigger each other's egos.
I wish you guys the best of luck with the rebrand and launch of that. Do you guys have a timeline yet?
So I was speaking with Ivan, and Ivan was saying like usually what is a very full studio, like over this couple of weeks, like past couple of weeks, it's been a little bit slow riding because a lot of people don't see this as like a mandatory spending, right? This becomes sort of discretionary.
It's discretionary.
Yeah. So
fair. Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of businesses are struggling right now.
Yeah.
And I see that in the market. I think I was just telling him I'm more in the events space right now. You hear about the layoffs, you hear about the cancellations of projects as well, especially into the busy season. When summer comes, everybody's expecting a slow season in the summer. So it becomes very difficult once you look at what you've budgeted for the year. You have Q1 is gone. You're going into a slow Q2, slower Q3, and then maybe Q4 it picks up again. And it doesn't make sense, all the overhead you have. And all of a sudden, you have to shrink to stay in the market.
Yeah.
Or else if you burn through this period, a lot of cash, you won't be able to come back into it. So.
It's also like, I think, industry specific, right? So the event space, like, like to some degree, like every year on year, like summer's going to be a drop and then winter it's going to pick up. So there is a cycle to it. Like an interesting industry, like I work in the fit out and interior design industry, right? And that is an interesting industry because like throughout the year, we do have projects. Winter, it's a little bit slower, like post Christmas, during Christmas, it's a little slower. But summer, it's relatively okay. Q1 is relatively slower. So there is some sort of a cycle. What happened with this is that what we figured out is like most of the companies, like the fit out companies, they are not ready for a situation where there is like a war and like people, mass exodus and everything. So they like I've seen some firms drop their workforce like by 60-70%, right? Which is a lot of workforce. Like, and it kind of baffles us, like in the office, back at office, like how tight were they running the ship, right? Like that you couldn't survive 2-3 weeks of.
Yeah, I think sometimes it's an opportunity as well that you don't have. I know sometimes companies do that, and I've heard it where as they grow, their overhead grows.
Yeah.
So you pay people more. It's a legacy thing. Someone's more experienced. But then I think they call it an early retirement opportunity. And in COVID, it happened where a lot of people retired earlier and they gave them a compensation package.
You get a golden parachute and you trim the wood.
And all of a sudden now you have a new baseline to work out of. You've got people who are experienced, but maybe not as much as experienced as the ones that just left. And you can build that foundation back again slowly. In a more methodical way that is cash flow friendly, I think. So.
Yeah, I think small businesses here, especially like the ones you're talking about in terms of fit out and contracting, they work off a rolling forecast. So if their next 3 months are affected, more likely than not for them to cover that lag, it's gonna take another 3 months. So if they're not holding cash in terms of cash burn for 3 to 6 months, they're in a bit of a pickle. But then you see technology companies, and especially during COVID, I think they use this opportunity for R&D. So you kind of, yes, you trim the dead wood and you make sure that people who aren't required, aren't essential for the future, leave. But then you take a little bit of time to figure out what you could position yourself as or provide as a service to the market. And I think you'll see a lot of companies here who already have innovative solutions to perhaps supply chain logistical issues, to perhaps hospitality issues with vacation homes, etc., etc. For example, vacation homes, when the crisis started, I think there was a big vacation home that allowed people to come in for free and just, push up their occupancy, but also give people a place to stay, because there were, expats here that were worried about where they were going to stay because they had hotel cancellations, etc., etc. And then there were certain companies that were underwriting perhaps a month or 2 months worth of Airbnb packages, just providing accommodation to their employees, but getting it for 60 cents in the dollar. So people will provide innovative solutions. I mean, more or less now the situation is pretty much
It's also
sorted
like a
out.
like some cases, right? Like for us, our company, not to promote the company, but like we do a collaboration with like a hotel chain, right? Like the hotel chain offers free spaces for people who wanna do their home, right? So there are like these innovative integrations that companies come up with. Like in our case, we couldn't offer the free stay ourselves, but like when a company came in, like so, I especially like we see a lot of innovation with the hospitality sector, right? Like the hospitality sectors are like in normal Dubai, like you won't be able to catch them, right? We give them a call for any potential integration opportunities. They'll like cut the call like on your face. Now they're like coming back to us like, hey, can we do this? Can we do this? Can we do this? Because the occupancy rate of all these hotel chains in general is completely
You know what it is
gone.
with hospitality? I think, for example, let's say you're a bigger hotel, let's say you're in Atlantis or One and Only or one of the bigger chains here. Your Q4 occupancy is driven by two factors. A, the kind of visitors that you have from the US, UK, Europe, who book 6 months in advance. And then B, people who are not as well planned and they book maybe 2 months in advance. The guys who book 6 months in advance, they've now lost those customers. So Q3, Q4 occupancy for these big hotels here, the customers that would have come in have already planned to go elsewhere when this happened.
So you're saying they would have lost those customers, or
They have already lost those customers. So we know people in hospitality. We speak to, because we invest in hotels as well as our fund. So we know that hotels right now have lost those, those customers that book 6 months in advance. So they're planning.
I'm assuming there's a cancellation policy, so there's no commitment to actually.
It's not even cancellation. Yes, that for sure, because you don't have to book, 6 months in, you don't have to pay 6 months in advance, but also you just aren't getting those bookings in, because people who book from Q2 for Q4 aren't booking it in. When this happened, they started booking into different locations except Dubai.
I see what you mean.
So now when you get closer to the end of Q3, you'll see all these hotels drop rates, drop ADRs just to fill up those seats.
Yep.
And then I think there's quiet closures here as well. For example, we know for one building of the Atlantis or one wing is actually closed. So when you go to book it right now, you can only book into certain wings, but they won't announce that it's closed.
Just an operational efficiency measure.
Yeah. To cut overheads, to cut utility expenses, etc., etc.
Yeah,
So there is a larger impact in the hospitality industry that we'll see towards the end of the year, with that lag of people not booking, 6 months in advance. And then you'll have creative solutions like this where they come in and they offer
creative solutions. And also like some of them, right? Like we do fit outs for hospitality as well, right? And like so while some of it sees it as an integration opportunity, we also see some of the bigger chains, what they're doing is like they're like, hey, there's not a lot of occupancy, we've always wanted to do some changes, renovations and everything. This is the time we invest. And so some of the people, like they're not doom and gloom about this, they're looking at it as an opportunity to invest more into it, build it up, and just it feels like the thought process is like if you're resilient enough, it will bounce back, sort of a mentality.
Yeah, I think it's a buyer's market right now. So you could. I find that the smart investor that has a little bit of cash on the side could scoop up some deals.
Yeah,
for sure.
I see so many distressed deals, especially real estate distressed deals on like Reddit and stuff like.
Already?
It's like constantly, and this has been since week 2 of the crisis beginning, right? Since week 2, like it's like my Reddit feed is filled with distress, and all of these are like Imar developments, the Mac developments.
Were they properties still that are not live, or?
It's a mix, but I've seen mostly off plans.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, because if you think about it, if you've paid 30% in advance and you expect to hand over by the end of this year, and if Imar pushes their handover by 6 months and you need to get out of the country, you're not cash flow, flush to make that payment happen. But I think this starts like top down.
Yeah.
The developers towed the line. They didn't drop the line during the crisis. But now that developers will push out their handovers. So anything that had, for example, a phase 1 handover by the end of this year and a phase 2 by the mid of next year is all being pushed into next year.
Why would they push it?
So the way developers do their allocations in terms of funding is they take, let's say, for example, 15%, 20% equity, that's cash that they put in. they take another 40 to 50%, that's project finance as debt. And the rest of it is actually off-plan sales. For their off-plan sales to work, they actually need that cash to come in, at least 30, 40% of that unit that they're handing over for the end of this year to come in 12 months in advance, because their construction cycle towards the end of it is about 12 months. The whole construction cycle is 2 years, but then that last bit of cash flow they require for working capital, preliminaries, et cetera, is the last 12 months. I believe so that the cash flow that they expected for that last cycle never came in. So you're seeing handovers
The cash flow from people, from pre-sales.
from resales. So when you get like a BCC at 40% and then people resell, or the developer is able to sell it at that BCC, the building completion certification. So that never came in. So you're seeing developers now, even the bigger ones, just slightly pushing it by 6 months. So anything that was supposed to be handed over by the end of this year got pushed out. And then if that's happening at the developer level, so prices are not dropping, but they're pushing out handovers, then of course, at the retail level, anyone who's invested in, who requires the cash now, is going to start reselling.
Yeah, I would also imagine, right? Like the off plans are typically targeted at investors rather than end users, right? Like, if the confidence in the completion, a factor of shippings being closed, factor of your resources being more expensive, labor's more in expensive now. The regular construction company, even fit out companies like where I work at, we don't do it at a cheaper rate just because we're desperate. Our costs have increased drastically that we have to make up for, right? So there is a higher, like, to keep our not the same margin, but at least some margin at the end of the day, right? So all of these have gone out. So if something was proposed to be completed in 2028, I heavily doubt it's going to be completed in 2028. So if it's not going to be completed in 2028, you have a problem at the bottom that nobody wants to buy something that has an indefinite completion period.
It is a good market for anybody who's export oriented. Any industrials company or construction company here that supplied materials, let's say, that is export oriented is doing extremely well right now.
How so?
Because they're hedged against the domestic market. We all knew, for example, 2023, 24, and 25 were the highest number of projects awarded in terms of real estate for UAE historically. So if
the number is some there was a project every 60 hours that was announced.
That is incredible.
Yeah, so there was like a report by a company called Maxwell something. They're like
Cavendish.
Maxwell
Cavendish.
Yeah. So they were saying like there was a rental, like there was a new project announced every 60 hours in UAE all together. So that is residential, commercial, all combined.
And so how does that translate to what you were trying to say?
So say you have 3 years of the highest number of projects awarded. Your typical sales cycle for a materials company is 18 months, meaning you book a sale, you do the design and engineering, you draw the shop drawings, you get them approved from the client, you extrude if you're an aluminum company, you fabricate if you're a fabrication company, etc., etc. And then you finally deliver, whether to a contractor, fabricator, or the end user itself. And this cycle is 18 months. So when we saw 23, 24, 25 as the highest number of projects awarded, you had an 18-month cycle across each. So you had deliveries in 26, 27, 28, and half of 29, as in the most number of deliveries awarded. We then knew that Saudi would have had the next boom. So after Dubai, it was expected that Saudi's Vision 2030 would result in 3 years of strong construction flows there. So all the Dubai companies, especially the ones supplying the fabricators and contractors, because Saudi doesn't have enough of their own fabricators, they could fabricate here, supply to fabricators, fabricate here and send it to Saudi for the next 3 years. Now people are, or at least the sentiment in the market from what we hear, is that people are afraid that this construction boom will not be replicated in Saudi. So it's not, are you in a pickle today? It's, are you going to be okay in the next 3 years? Because a lot of the demand here was expected to be replicated in Saudi in 3 years. So anyone that's export oriented into Southeast Asia, into India, into Africa, anyone who's sending materials out of here, even if it's not, fully fabricated or finished materials, but it's literally stock length aluminum profiles or steel structures, like, pre-engineered building systems, substructures of buildings, etc., etc. They're in the black. They're going to be good for the next 5 years. You'll see a lot of companies here that were trading firms that bought materials in from China, bought them in from Europe, did a bit of value engineering, and then sent them out to fabricators, there'll either be consolidation or many of those companies will collapse. Because that expectation of 3 years in UAE and 3 years in Saudi has just dropped. At least the 3 years in UAE is fine because it's awarded, but the Saudi might not be replicated.
And the thought process behind Saudi was also interesting, right? When my company visited Saudi and everything, the idea was that the margins would be significantly higher in Saudi because they are more cash rich, but also how it was described to me is that Riyadh is like just glorified Sharjah, right? And those who know Sharjah will understand what it means. But it's like the expectation of quality is significantly lower because for some reason they haven't experienced the quality that we see in Dubai in general.
Actually, I kind of disagree. I like Riyadh.
Riyadh's a beautiful
I've
place.
been there.
What we're talking
Minus
about
the
is
traffic.
Traffic's terrible. It's
It's terrible.
What we're talking about
the
is
roads are not done right.
They're not equipped for what they
Yes.
Yeah. What we're
their
talking
vision.
about is the construction side, right? Like the quality of materials being used, how they designed the structure. So a lot of it is like shell, like a square box with like gypsum walls and everything, which is like really low quality. So the expectation of quality within the people is still low, but also
Is that like the older product, or are you seeing that in your product construction?
it's mostly construction, right? Like construction and fit out, right? Like the other products is to a large degree standardized, right? You buy perfume's the same everywhere.
Sorry, older products. So that like construction and
Oh
fit out.
no. I'm talking about off plans, new recent plans.
Yeah.
Like off plans are like priced very low.
Yeah.
Right. But what we saw was like recently developed projects. It's all like concrete squares with like gypsum walls creating the rooms, low quality of materials. The expectation, like their expectation of luxury was very low. And it, like, I would imagine from a guy who's selling it, it wouldn't make sense to show them the higher quality stuff because like the price versus what I'm getting doesn't add up. It's like selling a Porsche to me, right? Like the Porsche is beautiful, but do I really need it, sort of a situation?
I think also dependent on the kind of market you're talking about. Like Riyadh and to a large extent Jeddah, in being developed and industrialized and, you know, bringing it into the modern world, has a large amount of land area.
Yeah.
Like as opposed to Dubai, Sharjah, you know, UAE, you just have that much more space to fill. So I feel like the ultra luxury projects in Saudi, Red Sea Global, etc., are of that caliber. They have panache, they have class, they're extremely luxurious. But then just to fill the sheer amount of land area that you have, if you require commercial real estate, if you require supply of hotels, if you require warehousing, industrial sites, etc., it's not skimping on quality. I think it's just mass production. It's the fact that you just need to fill that out.
I wouldn't even say skimping in quality, right? It's just the expectation of quality is not there, right? Like I'm like, you know India, I know India, right? Like the good quality in India is what we call substandard in Dubai, right? And that is really good quality in India because that's the quality the population expects, right? It's just a divide in how people perceive quality. The other thing is also that, like, because Dubai is such a small place and like everything's one on top of the other, and we have to find innovative solutions to do things. There they don't, because again they have so much land. Like there's not a need to build multi-story buildings in the first place. This is it's as simple as that.
The few times I've been to Riyadh, I'm not very familiar with it. On the outsides of the city, it seems like they have mega projects going on. It's a big piece of land, like you were saying, and it looks like it's gonna be up to the standards of maybe what we see here in the UAE as well. But then there's other projects that I've looked at that were, you know, not up to that standard. So I think it depends on who you're selling to, and maybe those bigger cities that are mega projects are, you know, down the road going to be for somebody that's going to pick them up that would appreciate the same amount of luxury.
Like, all that what I've said is like from the perception of population there. Like for us, the target market is the population, not the ultra wealthy investors who would invest into these fine quality products, right? So from that perspective, like it's all from the population perspective.
So I guess, what is your overall opinion on investing in Saudi Arabia right now compared to here? I suspect, and you touched on it a little bit, but I suspect probably the margins are better, and the growth trajectory is more amplified and
It's a
bigger
big market
compared
right?
to here.
It's a massive
And that's
market.
the thing. It's a function of their population as well, I think. And it's more of an organic population there that is local compared to here, where you've got an indigenous population, but it makes up a small percentage of the overall population. So it's
a
little bit of a difference.
homogenized population. So from a marketing messaging perspective as well, it's a lot easier, a lot more effective. So for us, like over here, our marketing and messaging is completely all over the place because we have, hey, this profile gets this. In Saudi, you have less of that. Right, like relatively less of that, and that's because of the homogenized population. But as far as investing in Saudi comes, I am not the right person.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, you mentioned population. You say homogenized population. UAE, the popular statistic is 9 to 11% of the population in Dubai, for example, is locals. The rest is expats. The majority of the skilled labor workforce is expats. And you saw that amortization kicked in for many years to help out in terms of upskilling and bringing people to the certain, pedigree that they're required to be at in terms of the local population. And now the government's announced that they'll slowly temper it down because they believe they've, provided that support and that framework within which Emiratis were supposed to be upskilled. Mm-hmm. In Saudi, I think that's number one. In Saudi, it's the opposite. I think 50 to 60% of the workforce is local. So they only bring in, or they have only brought in the expats required, perhaps at the senior most levels to, push down the education, knowledge, and experiences they've accrued in developed markets over the last 15, 20 years. So that education has perhaps been slightly quicker in that it only required one generation. You brought in, people, for example, let's say investment banking, you brought in MDs at the 10, 15 year mark in terms of experience at S&B Capital or at bigger Saudi domestic investment banks. Even HSBC there is largely a Saudi population making up the investment banking team, I'm pretty sure. So you brought in that expertise and then you pushed that education down. So number one, I think in terms of population, they are moving together in that synchronicity, I think.
It's very similar in Oman as well, right? Like Oman, I've been to Oman multiple times and it's a beautiful place. And there's a lot of local population there and they don't have, I'm not sure if they do or they don't, but a lot of the populated. So my dad was in Sohar Aluminium. Sohar is a town near Muscat, right? And most of their the aluminum plant is massive, but they run on almost a skeleton crew of sorts, right? They run on a skeleton crew and a majority of the employees, both in the industries, in back offices, IT, all across the board, it's a majority of Omanis. So those, it feels like UAE is unique in the nature of how we operate compared to the folks around us.
Okay. But just coming to your point, the crux of investing in the kingdom would be, I would relate it to investing into a startup in a growing market. If you're in the right position at the right time, you ride the wave. Whatever product you're, providing the market, whatever service you're providing the market, as long as it's essential to the growth of that market itself, you will ride the wave, no matter what happens. So I think a lot of companies, set up regional headquarters or, set up infrastructure services that they could provide to the economy there, whether that's construction or banking or, HR. A lot of companies moved in there. So whatever F&B, whatever, bit of the spectrum you sit at, as long as you're providing a service to the economy that makes sense, you will ride that wave. And that wave is coming. Saudi will, it's not as amplified as we expected it to be 4 years ago. Mm-hmm. And I think everyone's expectations have been tempered after, the NEOM announcements and all the consultants went there and made these massive projects and nothing really, came off it. So expectations are tempered, but there is a wave coming. The Saudi's growth is inevitable and maybe just kick down the line if not, imminent. So as long as you're providing something to the market that makes sense, you will grow with Saudi.
And in terms of providing something to the market that makes sense, I wonder if a good strategy would be to align with the 2030 vision, for
Absolutely.
example, and start with the government and what they're looking for to invest in, and then providing it as a solution as well.
100%.
Yeah.
I think this worked across the board with every GCC country, right? When you saw that, and it was surprising for me. a lot of what I saw over the last 3-4 years is perhaps my first time understanding economies or understanding how governments work or understanding how expectations are met, because this is my first few years as a professional. I was pleasantly surprised to see that most things that the UAE or Saudi or Oman or to an extent Qatar, said that they would set out to do actually happened. So to have a government that you can, and perhaps people have known this for 20 years, and it's my first few years as an industry professional, but to know that you can sit back and expect a government to make good in its promises and its vision pushes you to develop business in that direction. So you're right. Aligning with that Saudi vision of 2030 would be the practical approach.
Yeah.
It's also like if you read like a lot of news outlets and everybody, like they've recently scaled down the NEOM project. I think they've realigned on a lot of the projects that the like a lot of those NEOM projects, right? And like everybody says, it's sort of like it's like, yeah, it was definitely gonna happen, but like living in UAE, I've been here my entire life, right? Projects get announced, then things get realigned, and projects don't happen. And that is not necessarily a bad thing or an indication of doom. It's mostly that the government thinks the best use of money is not building a massive line, right? At some point, right? Like, so it should be a sign of like being agile, sign of a country that's not dictated by promises made few years ago. Like the promises made will be fulfilled as long as it makes rational sense. If it doesn't make rational sense, a country that is ready to admit that, you know what, this was probably stupid and moving out is also a very good thing that a lot of other countries don't do. Actually, they promised it, then there's a new government that will continue doing it. Like we see this in India, like government one will introduce a bridge to somewhere, government two will come, they will start the bridge slowly, government three will come, they will continue the bridge, government four, which is the original government, will come back into the power to finish the bridge off. That doesn't happen here. Like this, like these are quick, these are like we should be saying these are like startup countries, right? Like they think quick, they break fast, move on. And that's a very good thing, that like it's a positive indication compared to like what we read on the like on Financial Times, for example.
I think it's what makes it successful here and in other GCC countries as well is how they operate as a business.
Yeah.
Compared to the government operates as a business. And I was surprised to get like notifications from RTA to review them and their service, because it's like a Google review, but through their own internal mechanisms. And similarly with other like the FTA as well, I got a message from there. In Canada, I've lived there for 14 years, and I think they think they're perfect at the government level. They're not fiscally responsible. As you mentioned, if it takes it could take a bridge 4 or 5 governments to build. It's the same thing over there. So it's like every project is a sunk cost up until it's finished, and by the time it's done, it's not practical for that time anymore because the city has grown, changed, whatever. So that's one of the benefits here that people don't understand.
I think it's a matter of perspective, right? Like if I was an investor and I had money and I invest in this country, the GCC country is great. But if I was a working class plumber, for example, right? A place like Canada is not bad, right? Like sure, a bridge takes 4 governments to build, but at the end of the day, a bridge that was promised me to go from point A to point B is built, right? It's not.
But that's where I feel like that's where a market is maturing. Usually, when you have heavy investment, there's growth, and then your average plumber is making money, but then I guess there's other ways of making money that are probably from a returns perspective are higher, but also from a from a practical perspective is better. And in Canada right now, if blue collar is the way to make money, that means investment is maturing or matured already.
Yeah, but if you really look at the trend of how the world's moving, right? We thought like where my dad worked in automations for a very long time. His job was to build machines, program machines in Nestle factories to make Kit Kats and Cerelacs and all these things. And a common thing that my dad used to say when he traveled to places like Switzerland or US or like all these places, like people are generally afraid of the robotics because the blue collar jobs of the factory workers being gone. We are now in a place where the white collar job of being an investment analyst, being a programmer, or being like I don't know, an artist, being all these desk jobs are going away because of AI. And the people who will probably never go away are the plumbers and the carpenters and everything. So in the short run, is that the most highest return career option? No, but in the long run it seems like the only thing that's going to exist, right? So in a case like that, if you are an average plumber, would you rather have a bridge that solves your travel time, reduces your travel time by, like, I don't know, 14 minutes, or would you rather have a startup city that's building and breaking and building and breaking new things, right?
I would argue though that white collar workers are not going away anytime soon, and not because the ability to replace skills is not there. That really is there. Like a lot of what I did in my first year, if it took me 2 days, I could do it now in 10 minutes. It's incredible the amount of technology we have at our fingertips. But I think white collar workers now either develop the ability to make decisions, develop intuition, develop an understanding of the market that is broader than technical skills, or are pushed out. And I think that makes decision making at the top level very simple. Who do I see as somebody I can sit at the table with and make decisions with in 5 years?
The problem with that, right, is that you've had the opportunity to sit at a desk, do the lower level job, to be able to do the decision. What is going to happen in the next generation? And I worry about this for my kids, right? Like, I'm not even married. Like, at some point, I'm going to have kids. This is going to happen, 25 years later? 25 years later, these kids who are going to get out of university or get out of high school will never have an entry-level job. And as a consequence of that, if things go the way it is, they'll never be able to be at a place where they can make decisions, right? The number of decision makers available in the market is going to shrink drastically, because number of people who were even exposed to it by doing entry-level grunt work, all these things are no longer there because your Claude's doing it for you.
100%. I feel like even today, even at the nascent stage that we're at now, I worry sometimes for, like, even in my office, like there's certain things that I will automate with Claude, or there's certain things that my analyst will automate. And I'll look at him and I'll say, can you do this yourself though? Are you sure you can do this yourself? Because if you can't, that's worrying me. Because if you don't have Claude one day, then I also have to, I have to genuinely digest the fact that Claude is not going anywhere. Now you actually don't need to know how to do it yourself, but you need to know how to vet it. You need to know how to ask it the right questions. And it is perhaps my legacy way of thinking that if you can't do it yourself, you don't know the right questions to ask.
That is
you don't know the nuts and bolts.
That is a very good point.
It's also like, so this is like, I think that's because it's in the nascent stages, right?
Yes.
We were, like, a good example for this is, like, we were reviewing resumes because we wanted to hire a developer in a company, right? We were reviewing resumes, and a dude sent in his resume, and he's like, these are my projects and portfolio projects, and all of them were like local host port 9090, 8080, localhost 80, localhost 80, localhost 80. Now the problem, like, for the non-IT people, localhost means the website he's created is in his own computer and not in the public. So he's hyperlinked his own computer on the resume. So that is like the fundamental thing. So anybody who's done their work would know that it has to be pushed to the public so that the rest of the world can see it. If it's in your computer, nobody can see it.
No, but this is a terrible example because that's just not a good candidate.
That's not a good candidate. But, like, this is what happens is, like, yes, you can build amazing user interfaces and beautiful designs with the use of AI. What happens is that you never understand the fundamentals, and the opportunity to learn the fundamentals has drastically decreased.
But you brought up something very interesting, because now I'm thinking in 25 years, or let's say shorter, let's say 10 years, the gap, the literal number of years between somebody who doesn't go to, let's say, traditional university and gets started immediately and does, whether it's blue collar work or like starts a business or does a tradesmanship or something, right? The gap between them and then the person who has to get so highly educated that they are allowed to be that decision maker now, because now entry-level jobs are not there anymore. So perhaps instead of 4 years of education, perhaps maybe that education span through an apprenticeship becomes longer. So that time gap maybe stretches between someone who's a qualified professional and then someone who just starts off fresh and says, I'm going to figure it out?
I think the definition of education is going to change. Claude is going to be our university. ChatGPT is going to be our university through us. Like, I think the definition of education, broadly speaking, is problem solving something you're curious about, and you're put into university, if you're lucky enough, into a program that you like, and you're just problem solving and learning your way through these 4 years. And I think what's going to happen is, instead of doing it at an institution, you're going to try to solve problems you like using a mentor that is AI, which is now, I can only think of Claude because I've been using Claude for a while. But essentially, I think it's gonna evolve into something I can't articulate.
Yeah.
And it doesn't look like what we have here in terms of practicality. And just the last thought, the last thought is just to go back on this skill set. I think, have you guys? I've been learning so much about AI. I feel like I should have started a year ago. It's insane. But have you guys ever master prompted? Like, did a master prompt?
No.
It's prompt optimizing. They call it master prompting. But essentially, right before you start your project on Claude or on ChatGPT, you go like, "Hello, you are a CEO of a multinational company."
Oh yeah, every 2 days.
Yeah. Error is not part of your dictionary. You know, you are very rigid, blah, 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 blah. You have to think. Okay. You are, or if you want to be a consultant, for example, and create whatever, right? And then that's the starting point. And then as a result of that, you tell them, okay, here's a problem. Solve it as if you were that person. And this shortens this removes the potential for error, between you and your analyst, for example, to the point where it's becomes comfortable for you to go like, okay, that's fine. We just did this in 3 minutes. This financial model could have taken me 2 days collecting information as well. And all of a sudden, I'm using Perplexity to do the research on a certain topic in a certain industry, take that research, put that into Claude alongside a master prompt or whatnot, and have it produce on Excel an insane model that would have taken me my brains in a few days to figure out.
I think the next level to that is like, I do it with like Claude and all these platforms, and I do a lot of programming coding, right? So the next stage of that evolution of master prompting is like Claude has the ability to have skills as well. So you can add skills and then everything. So when I start with like a coding project, what we do is like there's a markdown file of these are the features, these are the user specifications, this is how the UI should look like. And then there is one MD dictating what I need, one MD dictating how web design in general works, how user design works, and like all these things give you that beautiful output that just like 6 months ago would have taken multiple prompts to get to, right? The only problem with this is, right, like if I would imagine what you are saying is the right approach to education, right? Like Claude and AI is probably going to be how we educate. The fundamental problem with that is that education's always been like a public good, right? And the minute we offload that public good to companies like Anthropic and OpenAI, we lose access, because you and I have the privilege of being able to pay a $200 subscription to Claude and getting things done. But the guy from my village without a computer and an internet doesn't. So what happens to that person? So there is the divide between the haves and the have-nots is going to widen drastically unless and until we make AI a public good, right? Like we have a necessity to nationalize AI development in individual countries. It can't be at the hands of...
I think the basic level AI that we have access to could be unpaid, especially with the competition now.
The competition's now, right? At some point, the competition's gonna
converge.
Yeah.
But even before that, because, by the way, I categorically disagree that you nationalize AI. I disagree. And before we get into
but I got what he's trying to say.
Yes.
Like,
no, yes, we can get into communism and that's fine. But nationalizing AI is a bit much. But you know what you said. Education today is creatively problem solving the problems that you like to solve. That's not education today, I think. I think today education is studying market-wide best practices in an area that you might like.
You might like, yes, I agree.
And that's 4 years of that.
I started from an ideal.
And what happens is what you said. You go from studying market-wide best practices in an area you might like to creatively problem solving problems you like to solve. And I think that's what AI does. And perhaps, and now I'm just thinking,
We're coming up
it's
with a product here.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. Perhaps there's a shift in recruitment that happens. Maybe you don't recruit en masse across buckets of positions, but you get more specialized quicker in your life. You go more niche, more faster.
So I'm in the events industry in multiple facets, but majorly in recruitment. So I recruit. We do recruitment for events, but also we're expanding across multiple industries as well to do non-events. But in events, the problem always is freelancers versus full-time employees. Like you have an event for a month, a week, or whatever. We're able to provide you somebody who's available on a freelance basis, and it's a different market. What we are doing and what we've been able to demonstrate is how lean our team is as a result of AI, because we are able to quickly take the requirement, create a job description, get it approved by the client to go like, this is what you're looking for, right? And then we put that job description into let's call it a machine. And that machine goes through a process with the database out there to filter out the best fit. And once they filter them out, there's an automated message that goes out. AI schedules an interview. The guy has to go and through video talk to the AI agent or assistant, and it asks it questions pertaining to the job description and also the requirements for us to get a very filtered bucket of 2 to 3 or maybe 20 to 30 people, depending on the requirement, to present to the client so we can onboard them, and that could take 24 hours.
That is incredibly well done.
Depending on the industry, because our bread and butter is events and event management, right? But if we deviate away, we have to build that database, and it could take up to 72 hours maybe.
How many of you is there in the firm?
There's a lot, but in that division of recruitment, there's about 6.
Oh, wow.
Incredible.
And
This tells me, I'm so sorry to cut you off. Tells me that what you've done in the podcast really is monetizable, because what he described as a process is something you've developed and just put it in.
So I guess it's a good time to get into the, what we have in common here, which is, you guys run a podcast, and we've had a few conversations about it. And I think what piqued my curiosity is you guys run it completely differently compared to, most of the people that I talk to running podcasts, including myself as well. So first of all, what is the point of origin? What is the story of origin for Dollar Diaries?
The story of origin is that me and my childhood friend, like at that point, I've known him for like 12 years. He works in a company. I was in between jobs and everything, and we absolutely hated our miserable jobs. And we were like, what do we do? Can we do something so that we don't have to be in said miserable jobs? Just caveat is that I work in a new company and I love the company right now, so that's not the job I'm referring to.
Okay.
But at that time, what happened is that we were like thinking about selling shoes, selling shirts, and yada yadas and all these things. And what we thought at the end of the day is like, we don't know what to sell yet. What would be interesting is if we speak to other people who are actually selling things and doing things and see what their thought process is, and maybe down the line we would find something that we can sell. And what it started was that is an exploration that was just going on YouTube. So we didn't really care about how the production looks, how the audio looks. We didn't care about anything. We did the podcast out of mics that I got out of my dad's wardrobe. Like he had like a couple of mics, like can I take this? Can I take this? The cameras were like, some of it was lent. I had like a DSLR that's lying around. My friend had a DSLR that's lying around. Nobody uses DSLR anymore because the phones are really good. So the DSLRs were just lying around. That I think the only thing we invested in was a mixer at that time, which was about like 1,000 dirhams or something. So that was the only thing we purchased for the podcast at that point. We started, we shot everything. It was completely utter garbage, right? And it's still there in our YouTube channel. We didn't delete any of this. There's the first few episodes were like us talking and the audio coming like good 2 minutes later. And we're still proud of the fact that we put it out. What happened from there is that at some point we realized like this was the process of sitting and talking to people that we never had a chance to talk to in the first place is a lot more interesting than whatever we possibly could have sold. So what happened is that we were inviting everybody, right? Like it could be a student, it could be like we've had instances of where we had people who do marketing, people who do PR, some, and in rare instances entrepreneurs, and in a lot of cases CEOs and C-suites and everything. So it was like a mix of guests, right? We wanted to learn from everybody, understand from everything, and we genuinely enjoyed talking. And you know me, and I talk a lot, so it's like the natural fit. We've done that for as of now, what, 2.5 years now. 2.5 years, 90 or so episodes have gone out. There's still like 6 or so episodes that we recorded that's going out week by week. And this was at the point where we realized that, okay, we can't be everything to everybody. We have to niche down. We have to understand that out of these 90 or so conversations that we've had, like what did we enjoy the most? What do we see ourselves doing? And what is our common shared interest? And the common shared interest has always come to something to do with the area of investments and startups and entrepreneurship and these type of sectors. And a place that really intrigued us is knowing how capital works, right? In this country specifically, in the region specifically, how capital moves, right? Like how somebody at an investment side think about capital versus how somebody running a startup thinks about capital. Very complete day and night thought process. So we are at a stage that we are now niching down to understanding capital. That means whatever we've done for 2.5 years is going to take a little bit of a pivot, right? Our branding changes a little bit, our colors changes, we are standardizing a lot of things. And although it's a little annoying to sit and change everything and 2 years of SEO gone to shit, the advantage is that now everything's more standardized, everything's more professional. And at some point I personally had to sit and accept that change is good and evolution is good. So that is like the full 2.5 years in a single long, very overly elaborated phrases.
And it sounds like an informed decision, 2.5 years of data that you've had. So you can look back, sit down with everybody at the podcast and strategize on what worked, what didn't.
Yeah.
And then that makes the rebrand more thoughtful and even more impactful potentially.
Yeah. And we were also like the fact that we never rented out a studio. Everything that we do, like the equipment is our own equipment. We own the equipment. The problem with owning our equipment is also that we didn't know, none of us come from a background in audio and video and everything. So I had to sit and learn how microphones work. I had to sit and learn how videos work, how cameras work, like how different lenses give different things, how lighting works, how editing works. Like I for the first time in 2022 was the first time I opened Premiere Pro to figure out how to video edit, right? How video editing works, how social media works.
And you guys do that in-house, right?
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
Not
no.
anymore?
Yeah.
Okay.
But the fact that we like the day one principle, like when we started, right? The day one principle when I started with my friend was that if we know how everything is done, we'll never be reliant on anybody. So if the editor has a wedding and he has to go off for a couple of weeks, we won't be in a place where we are scratching our heads. The second thing is, if we know how things are done, we know how to price them. Right? That was the fundamental principle. Like a 1 year of that was the principle from the beginning. 1 year later, we had the opportunity to meet Anas. Anas came on, and it was like it's been fantastic since.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's a compliment, Anas, by the way.
Yeah. I have to insult him off screen, so like I'm just setting up the scene.
Yeah, I'm processing. I'm not used to receiving compliments.
Well, and right after the podcast is over, I have to talk to him about A, B, C, things he's late on, things he has to give me. Yeah, and this is after I've automated a good chunk of it.
I have a couple of things to speak about. I wanted to add something in. We will not shamelessly plug the new name because I think we're going to wait for that.
Feel free to do so.
No, because what I want to talk to him about is how we're going to announce this. But and it's nice. It's actually quite nice sitting together and strategizing. I think that is one of the most important parts. I don't know if you touched upon this, but the ability to sit down with people you actually, the the company, with which you enjoy sitting, and you say, okay, we sit, we think about ideas, we strategize, we figure out the future, but we like where we are today in the moment together, having fun. And that perhaps is the most important thing about running a podcast, running a business together. But in terms of what we're going to do in the future, if you were to look at, for example, 20 VC or any podcast like Dry Powder from the US, any podcast, and I say Dry Powder with a grain of salt because that's controlled by Bain Capital. But
someone out there is going to understand what that reference.
Yeah, sure. If you see podcasts in the US that speak about both the guys who build the ships and the guys who finance the ships, like capital in general, what they've become over time as they get popular, accepted by mass media, especially in the investment space, B, connected into the ecosystem itself, and 3, develop credibility, with the people that they speak to. They eventually become financial powerhouses of some kind. They, there's an offshoot of a podcast that becomes a venture fund. There's an offshoot that becomes an accelerator. There's an offshoot that becomes an incubator. And this city provides you with opportunity that is in a way unparalleled. You see people here that start with podcasts and end up with, luxury brands or, deals with, massive lifestyle companies, et cetera, over time. I think our goal as yet in terms of vision is not defined, but we know that eventually we will develop something that is akin to a capital powerhouse in this space here. And I think the best way to put our foot forward for that is to niche down and speak about capital, and whether that's people who control that and write the checks, or people who run the businesses that require those checks.
Okay, interesting. You won't say the name yet, but I'm curious about how you guys will launch. Or is that also?
I honestly don't know. Like all I know, like so how it works with us
you
is
piqued
like
my curiosity. It was I figured it's gonna be like fireworks in the background.
How the team works is very simple, right? Like I am the operations guy. I take care of the day-to-days, right? Like everything has to go out on time. Things have to be done. Things have to be paid. People who do the work has to get paid on time. Like the costs, accounting, everything is taken care of. And whatever I do it on a daily basis, I try and automate. So initially I used to just drop the episode, like figure out the descriptions for the episode and everything. Now we have an internal tool. All I have to do is drop the audio of the episode. It will give me all the descriptions, everything completely generated fully, right? Completely generated. And that's an inbuilt system that I built it myself. Clips are automated.
Sure.
Things are automated. Workflows, right? Like if we set a booking, like everybody gets the booking invite, everything completely automated. So that's how I work. What he does is like go offline for several days and then call us in the middle of the night and tell us a grand idea. And then he'll go offline for the next several days. And me and my friend Ghazala and the rest of us are sitting and figuring out, how do we do this? And then he's gone completely, 7 days, gone, right?
He's like the visionary. He's like Steve Jobs. I need this done. And then he just...
It's not, I need this. Here's his conversation. Guys, wouldn't it be so cool if we do all this? And gone, completely gone, silent, dead.
And now you're stuck with this burden to go like, this is a good idea.
The problem is like we think it's a good idea.
It's not out of choice. And I think he knows this. I'm at the office till 12 a.m. every day. It's insane. I mean, that's what you expect in investment banking.
Yep.
Second year in. B, more often than not, the ideas I've come up with, I've been quite successful.
Yeah,
okay.
Right. So, but I do agree, and I will never ever take any, and I can't take any bit of effort away from him. This is built off his back, very clearly, and we're lucky to have somebody who enjoys the work as much as he does. But I would also say that I have a little bit of value add in terms of making sure we're going in the right direction. Because our direction has changed a lot in the last 18 months.
We're all different people, right? Like,
I want you to speak to the success of what's behind that success, because I think you're talking about us, and I don't think we've touched on what us is. Usually, there's a main host. There's a role for every single part of the podcast, whereas you guys have a different setup I'm not sure if it's still the case, but last time we spoke, it was that.
We started out as a 4-people podcast. Like a team was 4 people that turned into 5, then 6, then 7. Then at one point it was 8 people. 8 people. They were all interested with varying contribution levels. Nobody's never not contributed. Everybody's contributed what we've asked of them in terms of effort, in some cases cash that we needed to do the next thing. So everybody's contributed at some time. And then, we're all working adults. Life comes, right? Like commitments are there. So some people had to take a step back. So currently we are a 5-people team. What we do is that, like, I take care of the operations. Anas does some of the
What do I do now?
thoughts. No, but Anas like brings in like the direction that we need, right? Like honestly, because I'm not currently active in the industry. He's the one who's in the industry who knows what's what.
He's got the finger on the pulse.
Right, finger on the pulse, right? Like I take care of the day-to-days. We have Ghazala who takes care of the operations, not like the marketing side of things. She's a PR professional, takes care of the like how content goes out, how the content looks and everything. Okay. And sometimes I overstep her and do my own thing and I get shit for it. But then we're all close friends at the end of the day, so it completely works out. Then we have Aditya, who's my childhood friend that I started this with. I don't know how he does it and I don't know what he does, but he is solely the responsible for the guests we have.
Yeah, I have to interject. He's incredible.
Right.
He's a bulldog. You tell him, I want to speak to this person. He will come hell or high water. You will speak to this person.
Right.
Okay.
We've had the CFO of AdNoc sitting in our dingy ass studio with like our shitty equipment and like having a good time. And I have no idea how he pulled it off.
Wow.
And as soon as you bring them in, they enjoy the conversation. It's just, how are you bringing them in?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
How did that even happen?
Is he
incredible.
connected or does he not? Like,
No,
he's
no,
really
no.
persistent.
He is so persistent. He will find every single account you have and he will hammer you down until you at least give him a response. He has gone to the point of reaching out to Steve Wozniak and Bill Gates and who else? Like, we have emails sent out to the highest of high possibilities just because it's like shot in the dark. Why not? Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
We were so close to
that.
having Neil Patel on the podcast, the marketing guy. But the Neil Patel wasn't him. Neil Patel was Iman.
Yeah.
We've had like the only reason we turned down the interview is because we didn't want to do an online interview at that time.
Yeah, we keep things physical.
But we were so close to having like the chief executive officer of Marvel Comics in US.
Wow.
Right? It was almost done. The only caveat was that he was in town and I wasn't a fan of doing a Zoom call podcast. So we turned them down in a weird way. We had CFOs of...
You're too big. You guys are too big right now.
We've had the CFOs of banks. What was the bank?
We've had Deutsche, we've had Ansari
Barclays.
Exchange CRO, we've had Barclays CFO. I mean, I'm not going to... This sounds a bit
but yeah,
facetious.
good for you guys, honestly.
Yeah, and this is all... We're saying this because Adi's incredible.
Yeah, we don't know how he does it. Like, and at some point we don't ask him, right? They
just appear. He's like, hey, show up at 1.
Now,
they actually disappear because he doesn't tell us anything. Okay, we have a system for him to book it in, right? When a guest is there, he just has to fill their details, their phone number, everything.
Okay.
He fills it in. It comes to our calendars and goes to Notion, right? We will get like, I am sometimes in a meeting in my office and suddenly I get a notification, a new guest has been invited, this is the name. And I'm like, okay, who did Adi book this time? I go click the LinkedIn, CFO of some Fortune 500 company. Motherfucker. Like, how did you...
Did you guys start sweating?
Yeah.
As well, like, okay, we need to take this.
Oh, crap.
No, we're actually... I've never really sweat when I've seen it. I'm just like, okay, this is going to be a fun call.
Yeah,
but I will add this. For 2 years straight, Adi has had completely free reign. In that he is, yes, we're talking about the good guests, but there's also been guests that, frankly, have not made a lot of sense. Like you get like a...
He's like, the creative, I think, behind this.
He just brings the most random, like you'll have a not a real estate mogul, just some guy doing real estate for the last 10 years. You don't even know if he's successful or not, but he's come on. Then you have, wait, I cannot really... shit on our guests, but let's say you have
variety
a wide array or a wide variety of guests that have come on, and now for the first time, We've developed a list, let's say, of private equity firms and family offices that he has to reach out to. And I am so excited just to see, because now he has like a defined goal. I want to see how many he gets.
If his skill set is up for, if he wants to monetize his skill set, I suspect, because I have a list too, and I think people have lists in general to be able to niche down.
We've never had lists. 2 years we haven't had a list.
And now you're
we've had Adi. now we have a list.
Yeah.
That's a superpower.
Right.
Yes,
So
but
that's,
sorry, go on. You were saying.
I was just gonna say, I mean, I'm happy to sit down with him and tell him, hey, he's a sales guy. Like he's trying to hit numbers.
I don't think he realizes it.
Yes.
But that's sales. That's sales
Yeah.
101.
Yeah,
like I have a list.
Even
it's my hit
speaking
list.
to him sometimes is frustrating because he's so headstrong about certain ideas, and I love speaking to him. This guy, he makes me happy. Really, he makes me happy. Yeah.
Well,
That is Adi. The last person is Guhesh. So he's in Australia right now doing his master. So whenever he comes, he hosts the episode and stuff. And we have a rotating host situation. So there's no one constant host. So if the guest is like the CFO of Barclays, probably the best person to sit and talk to is Anas, right? If like we had the general manager of Shake Shack the other day. I love Shake Shack, so the best person to talk was me. Sometimes we have a marketing person.
fair enough.
Marketing person, and the person to talk to is Ghazala. Sometimes it's somebody who is like a little bit more philosophical, talks quite a bit, then Guhesh is. So we have a rotating cast of who is the best fit. And then we have some folks as well who come in who are like the third party opinions at this point, right? Like they used to be part of the podcast, but they don't want to completely leave completely. Also, they don't have the time to contribute as well. So we invite them in, we sit with them and say that, hey, these are all our plans. And her entire job is to sit and shit on all of them. And that adds so much value because we both we call each other and we're like, we should do this. Then he will echo chamber mine and like, we should do that.
You know what? She is a really good sounding board.
Yeah.
You need her name's Iman. This girl in particular, she'll put her feet up, actually on a table, and she will tear all your ideas down and explain to you methodically why, with a glint in her eye that tells you that she's very serious.
Okay.
And then she will not provide you with a solution. She'll walk out of the room. And then you got to figure it out. It's incredible. And I think we've done this twice now. We have a semi-annual, we're supposed to have quarterly meetings across the team, but let's say we have a semi-annual sit down with everybody to explain what our strategy is. And we've spent a month or 2 months thinking of what next steps are. And as soon as she walks in, she says, no. And then you've got to figure out what's next.
Yeah. I think, to be honest, I think the secret to your guys' growth and success is your openness to not only new ideas, but it seems like there's no egos. Everybody's just trying
there are egos. I'm not going to say no ego.
Well, everybody has a hint of egos.
I think we keep let's say this.
It's a healthy.
Everyone has an ego, but I think the core team doesn't trigger each other's egos. Meaning when you're friends, you don't trigger someone's ego. You might have that ego, but it might be shown to someone else. But between each other, you don't really.
Yeah, we have this mandatory requirement that after all of this is done, we still have to go grab dinner together and talk to each other's parents and because we are all friends at the end of the day, right? So whatever ego you have is kind of superseded by the fact that you are friends first, co-workers next. So that definitely helps quite a bit.
Okay. Well, I wish you guys the best of luck with the rebrand and launch of that. Do you guys have a timeline yet? Or?
June.
Summer.
Okay.
Summer.
Okay. Flexible timeline. Okay.
Yes. But just a plug. Depending on when this episode comes out, you'll either find us at the Dollar Diaries or Capital and Kahwa. That's the name.
Ooh. I like it. Capital.
The website's up. There's a fake landing page at the moment.
Yeah, you don't have to speak about it.
Lovely. Well, we can cut this out. Depending on how you feel.
No. Cut out my explosion after.
Well, listen. Thank you guys for coming in.
What do you think of the name?
I love it.
Perfect.
I love it. I think I love it, but I think people will love the people behind it genuinely because this hour.
That's so sweet.
Yeah,
That's
truly. I think it's there's a healthy dynamic between you guys. There's definitely chemistry with you guys sitting in front of me. I could see it, but also with the team as well to be able to come this long. And I think this next phase is probably going to be a really exciting one for you guys. Inshallah. So I wish you all the best and thank you guys for coming on the show.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers, man.